My name is Ismo Toivonen and I welcome you to watch my thesis seminary, which topic is documenting a local area network. Goal of this thesis was to consider the needed resources in documentation and managing it, and importance of intent them to it their work. Choosing right tools and signification of designing an object library, finding a right level of depth and wideness and good layouts from usability point of view. In other words, to help developing up-to-date, high-class and easily managed network documents. The study method of this thesis was design science. That means information was collected by iteration and methods were developed based on collected information. Process was not purely done with design science. I already have quite significant amount of knowledge and material for this topic because of my work as network administrator. However, existing methods were evaluated carefully based on that research science methodology to try to find some soft points of existing processes. During the writing process of this thesis, my work responsibilities changed to include a network administration of new factory site in Sweden. There was no any kind of documentation of that site, so everything had to be started from 0 point. That offered a great opportunity to test processes of this thesis very carefully in practice, as documentation and administration processes had to be evaluated and to fit in totally different company culture. Some topics had to be limited a little because documenting is a very large issue. Analyzing and developing an inter-organizational and also some internal information flow processes were left away from this thesis because they don't have much to do about IT and even less about networking. They are more or less HR things, I think. Of course, they affect greatly to producing and administrating of documentation, but analytics of those processes were not considered in this thesis. It's possible to use same methods in documenting wide area networks, but usually they are more weighted to protocols than cables. Also, standardization is harder because there are more operators in one environment, like contractors, subcontractors, etc. General cabling standard was also handled very limited for two reasons. Where general cabling standard is already implemented as full-scale, network is already planned to structured hierarchy and topology. So documenting is already quite easy. In other hand, where general cabling standard is not implemented at all, it may turn out to be very hard to implement it in full scale. That's why general cabling standard is handled only from parts that can be realistically assumed to be able to carry out. To go deeper in thesis content, defining a documentation has many smaller sub-processes and phases. Perceiving that clears out and structurizes a designing work of documentation. Defining the effects of documentation forms a base for designing work. At there, a scale of executed documentation is planned. One has to clear out needed or available administration resources for the level of detail that is planned to design. Width and height of scale of documentation has to be refined. And also as third is a life cycle of document. That forms a triangle that dimensions are those 3 points that helps perceiving a workload and get an idea of what kind of document is designed. Next, managing the information has to be planned. processes of sharing the information to keep it up to date. Limiting data to level where information unity and information management is possible to achieve. And also it's very important to intend all sides who are going to manage and administrate the documentation. Right kind of software is affecting to easiness of information management from technical point of view in same way as the information management was from people's point of view. Firstly, standards, whether to use existing or build new ones, etc. Limiting the information based on feasibility of used software. And unifying naming systems from software data point of view, meaning how data fields are capable to handle different strings and so on. Here's a real-life example of one company that mainly builds networks. It's their main business. So this looks quite nice and it's telling you everything you need from technical point of view. But I could ask, is used software the best possible to this kind of documentation work? This is created with Microsoft Excel. How much more time creating this has taken compared to real documenting tools? Next thing to plans are topologies and hierarchies, whether to build logical and physical network document or maybe both. Hierarchy and layout has to be planned and also a detail level of presentation. These are forming a part that is already something more traditional, which we understand as network documentation designing. In other words, we've gone this far on planning until we are handling that kind of concrete things that are traditionally formed a whole designing process of network documentation. I claim that this is the reason why world has so many badly designed and badly managed network documentations. Here are examples of how hierarchy can be designed. There is large map level and then distribute nodal point, and last the cabinet level that already solves all connections in fiber and switchboard level. In last phase, we can already concentrate on details like naming system, object appearance and level of detail, and table-formed documentation's object design. That last one can sound exotic, but single cells in table are same kind of object as graphical object are in graphical document. So there should be paid attention to relation to each other of different cells, so that you don't get into the situation where you have to update same information to multiple cells in different documents. One information should be in one place only. So as a result, the object library is working well and is ready to get implemented. The earlier fault is done, the more expensive it is. If designing was continuing forward before designing failure was noticed. Therefore, the most expensive and widely affecting errors are made practically before a single line or object was inserted to document. But as earlier mentioned, points were followed in good quality, document is easy to create and draw and write down, and then it's possible to move to daily management period of documentation. Management is not only updating patch connection information, but also, for example, expansive of document due to the building project, etc. And management responsibility changes and information flow changes due to the organization and personnel changes. And last but not least, following an application life cycles to prevent a situation where support of application ends or maybe some feature changes or stop working. So it's better to see it before to get prepared for changes in documentation rather than seeing it too late and to get into a situation where you have to build the whole documentation again from scratch because of very last minute warnings. So quickly repeat from those points mentioned before. Defining the effects, information management, technical solutions, topologies and hierarchies, and as last, the objects. As a summary about network documenting, I'd like to say that documenting process is a whole thing where all the points are equally important. But if I'd have to raise one point above others, it would rather be weighted in time scale of process than some technical details, so that the early phases and things affecting over your own organization will be considered the best possible way. This thesis' purpose was exactly to make it easier and structurize these early parts of designing process. Therefore, Thesis didn't handle an actual documenting work with documenting application and tools. I believe drawing a document is the easiest part of producing documentation, after those early parts have considered carefully and high quality. Also, I could say that failing to indenting resources will cause a significant risk from integrity and document being up to date point of view. It can scupper all careful plans and technical solutions if at some point document is not up to date anymore because people haven't understood their roles and how important it is to share information about changes in network. I thank you for being interested of watching this seminary, and if you get more interested about it, you can find my thesis from internet in that address on this slide. But unfortunately, it's in Finnish only. Thank you.